This is Hockey Talk, where we talk everything hockey. I am John.
And I'm Mike.
All right, Mike, let's go. Now, the first topic on tonight's discussion board is on Sunday, February the 2nd, the Anaheim Ducks and the Montreal Canadiens. They played in Anaheim. Montreal had a 2-0 lead, and the Ducks came back and won the game 3-2. A terrible game for the Canadiens. Patrik Laine was benched in the third period, and Laine and his line were outshot for the game 8-1. Not good, Mike. Kirby Dach, he seems like he's a pretty poor playmaker. He has only produced this year 0.09 primary assists per 60 minutes of game time, one of the worst results in the entire league. Mike, what is going to happen to this line? Or maybe better yet, I should ask you, what should happen with this line? What do you think?
Well, I mean, Montreal is a little limited with who they have for high-end offensive players. So, I mean, the only other option that if they want to get Laine a little more productive, and I mean he's been fairly productive, is to swap maybe him and Slavkovsky and put him with Suzuki and Caulfield. But I have a feeling Montreal wants to try to keep a little bit of balance on their line. So I'm not quite sure that they'll do that. However, I'm not quite sure that Kirby Dach is the. I mean, he was a high pick with Chicago, but he was hurt a lot, and the games that he's played, hasn't played that great. So I think that maybe playing Laine with Jake Evans might get a little bit more production out of him because Jake Evans has had a pretty good year. So,
Right.
but Kirby Dach, like I said, he's hasn't lived up to the hype that he had as I think if I'm not mistaken, he was a top 5 pick, maybe number 4 in his draft year. So, and I don't see Montreal going out at the deadline and getting any big names to come in to that lineup either. So I think pretty much you're going to see pretty much the status quo on what they've been doing with maybe the small tinker here and there with line combinations.
Do you think that they could be sellers at the trade deadline, or are they just going
Oh,
to stick with
absolutely,
what
they'll
they've
be
got?
selling.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
they're going to. Yeah.
Not sure what parts that they have that they'd be moving. David Savard's been talked about because he's a free agent after the season. I mean, this year would probably be the ideal year if they were going to trade Mike Matheson. I think this would be the year that they should, only because he's got another year left on his deal. He's not super expensive. He's only just under $5 million a year, so I think that he would have some really good trade value if they decided to move him, because I think they'd get easily a first round pick plus probably something a little bit more than that for him. Their other UFAs this year are Dvorak, Armia, and Jake Evans for the forwards. So I wouldn't be surprised to see them move Dvorak and maybe Armia. I think probably Jake Evans is a guy that they want to keep. So if they can re-sign him, because he's played a good role on that third line and stepped up to the second line a little bit here and there. So he would probably be the guy if they're going to re-sign any of them. I think he's probably the one.
Okay. All right. Well, let's go on to our second topic. Now, the rest of these topics tonight all have to do with the Four Nations Cup. That's really what we wanted to get into tonight. The Four Nations Cup, the tournament goes from Wednesday, February the 12th to Thursday, February the 20th, featuring Finland, Sweden, United States, and of course, Canada. I want to talk about some of these line combinations for this tournament, Mike. Now, this might sound a bit crazy, but is it possible that Crosby and McKinnon could play together 5-on-5, even though they're both centers?
Well, Team Canada has a lot of players that can play center.
I
So
know.
I think half the lineup can pretty much play center.
That's
I,
right.
I, I don't know, to be honest with you. I don't think they would. I think they'd really want to spread out the scoring. However, if it gets down to crunch time, if the game's close in the last couple of minutes, I wouldn't be surprised at that point. But I think starting off, they're going to try to have the lines a little bit more balanced so that the scoring is spread out amongst all four lines.
Okay, now just to throw this little tidbit in there, if the two of them were playing semi regularly 5-on-5 at the beginning of the tournament, would that stir up the rumors about them playing together in Colorado, like what we talked
Um,
about last week?
well, I guess it would depend on the chemistry that they have, maybe, but I mean, and that all comes down to whether Crosby would be willing to waive his no trade clause, and I'm sure that if he decided to waive his no trade clause, they'd probably give him like the Ray Bork treatment and let him decide where he
Right.
wanted to go, and then try to make the best deal possible with that team that he wanted to go to. I think his loyalty, they owe him at least that. So who knows? We'll see. Like I said before, I still think he's going to stick with Pittsburgh, but if there was ever a chance, that would be probably the team he would go to.
All right. Well, let's go with what you and I both believe. I mean, I don't think he's going to go to Colorado either, but it's quite interesting to talk about a little bit. So now, who is going to be his line mates then? Do you think for Team Canada? What do you think?
Well, here's what I think Team Canada's probably going to do when it comes to their lines is they've got a little bit of sandpaper throughout the lineup, and I think you're going to see one of those guys on each line. So I think you're going to see one of the top centermen, like they've got McDavid, they've got Crosby, they've got McKinnon, and they've got Braden Point. So I think those are going to be your four centermen. Um, with potentially Sam Bennett being the fourth center, actually, um, and have Point up on another line. So I think that you're going to see Sam Bennett, who's a little bit gritty. He'll have his line. You'll see Brad Marchand on a different line. You'll see Konechny on a different line, and Anthony Cirelli. So I think they're going to split those four guys up, put them all on a scoring line, just so that they have a little bit of grit. And other than that, it'll be the talented guys playing together. So they're going to probably put Reinhart, I would guess, with Crosby, since Crosby's probably the best playmaker out of the group. Like,
Right.
I think McDavid's probably going to play with someone like Mitch Marner. Um, Also, I think Marchand might be the guy that plays with Crosby, because if I'm not mistaken, I think he played with Crosby back at the last World Cup of hockey. So I wouldn't be surprised to see that. Um, Mark Stone, he would probably be the other shooter on one of the other lines, maybe with McKinnon. He might be a good fit because they both play in the Western Conference. So it's all speculation at this point, because they can spread this out so many different ways. So it's just it's gonna be interesting. I mean, I think we're gonna see some really good hockey.
What about the first unit power play? I mean, it's going to be McDavid. It's going to be Crosby, I imagine. McKinnon too, but who else after that?
Well, you definitely think you're going to see Cale Makar at the point. And then you're going to have another forward out there. And you know what? It might be Marchand. They might want a guy like that that's going to go to the front of the net. Could be a guy like, maybe Konechny, maybe Sam Bennett. Like, it all depends what kind of dynamic they want to go with. I mean, they're going to have two great power play lines
Oh
either
yeah,
way. So
absolutely.
um, so I think that I think they'd lean towards Marchand as far as the gritty guy to play on the first line power play.
Okay, all right. Well, let's go on to the third topic tonight. I want to talk a little bit about the defense pairings for Team Canada. What do you think? How do you think this is going to pan out?
I think it's actually pretty easy when you're looking at defense. I think Makar is probably going to play with Taves, who he's playing with now. I
Right,
think
pretty
Peter,
easy.
yeah, I think Peter Angelo and Theodore are going to play together because they're currently playing together. And then the other pairing will be Josh Morrissey with either Colton Parayko or Travis Sanheim. So depending on which one's in the lineup. Because I think Sanheim and Pareko are the two that will be the ones that come in and out of the lineup. So whoever's in will probably get paired with Morrissey, would be my guess. And I think Morrissey is probably your second power play guy with, you know, potentially sharing some power play time with Shea Theodore. Um, since those are the Morrissey, Theodore, and Makar are the three most offensive players for defense out of that group.
What about defense pairings for the penalty kill? Because you say there's some sandpaper here, but we've talked a lot of offense. But what about some penalty kill? Because Team
Yeah.
Canada is going to take penalties.
So for penalty killing, are you talking defense or forwards?
For the defense.
For the defense, I think that's where you're going to see a guy like Pareko or Sanheim out there. Also, Peter Angelo, you'll see him out there, perhaps with Devin Tays. I think you're mostly going to see Makar, Morrissey, and Theodore only on the power plays and at even strength. So I think your penalty killers are probably Pareko, Sanheim, whichever one's in the lineup with Peter Angelo. For the most part, that'll be your number one penalty kill, I would guess.
Okay. All right. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the goalies here, Mike. So, what one of these three goalies is going to get the most starts here? We got Binnington from the Blues, Hill from Vegas, and Monabo from the Canadiens. Which one of the three do you think is going to get the most starts?
I think they're going to go with Aiden Hill to start off. He'll be the guy. As far as who the backup is, your guess is as good as mine. I mean, neither Montembeault or Binnington have been lights out. I mean, from one game to the other, one game they could play great, the next game that they're not going to play. They don't play very well. So I think it's a toss up at that point who the backup's going to be. But I think Aiden Hill is probably the guy that's going to get the majority of the starts in this tournament. I do think he's going to play against the States and probably Sweden, and then the backup will probably get the game against Finland, would be my guess.
Okay, all right. Now let's go on to our fourth topic. Now, obviously, the Americans have a strong team as well. Now, how might some of their line combinations look like? Anything we should keep an eye on from the Americans, because they're not going to be easy to beat.
No, the Americans are going to be tough. Their lineup is loaded. I think that they are probably going into this tournament. They should probably be the favorite based off of the strength of the whole lineup. So as far as their lines go, I think they're going to do something similar to what I think Canada should do, and that is have split the gritty players up and have them on each line, and those players would be Chris Kreider, JT Miller, Vincent Trocheck, and the Tkachuks. I have a feeling they might see the Tkachuks playing on the same line though, just to have the two brothers play together a little bit.
Right.
But I mean, they've got skill all throughout the lineup, and all of these guys are top end NHL point producers. I mean, their weakest point producer is Brock Nelson of the Islanders, and he's still pretty decent. He had 30 goals or something like that last year. So, strong lineup. As far as who's going to play with who, I think your centermen are going to be Matthews, Eichel, JT Miller, and Vincent Trocheck. I'm not sure if Larkin's going to move to the wing, or maybe JT Miller moves to the wing, but either way you look at it, the lines are going to be solid the whole way through.
Right. And we know that if Matthews gets hot, we know he can pot bunches.
Yeah.
We've seen it last year. So he's not the only one on that team, but he definitely can. So, all right. Well, let's talk a little bit about Finland and Sweden, Mike. Now, I don't know a whole lot about a lot of these teams, about both of these teams, really. What catches your eye on these teams? Is there anything in particular you're keeping an eye on here?
Well, for Sweden, we'll start with Sweden since I got their page all loaded up. I think Sweden's going to be a competitive team. They're going to keep the games pretty close. As far as the players that they've got a few guys that have really stepped up and played well this year, and they've got a couple guys that have regressed. And the guys that have regressed over last year, Joel Eriksson Ek hasn't had a great year this year. He was hurt a little bit, and he hasn't gotten back into form yet. Elias Lindholm has struggled this year, joining the Bruins. I figured he'd fit like a glove on that team, but he's really struggled. And Gustav Nyquist of the Predators, and I mean the whole Predators team has
Right.
had a tough year. So, and Elias Pettersson, another one, has regressed
Right.
over last year. So those four, and sorry, there's one more. Mika Zibanejad struggled. However, he's picked his game up there over the last couple of weeks to get the Rangers back into contention. But you know, they're going to have to find their game, or it could go south pretty quick. But as far as the rest of their forwards go, I mean, Kempe's had a great year this year. Jesper Bratt's had a great year. Lucas Raymond, William Nylander are the guys that stand out. So they're going to be counting on these guys to carry a lot of the load, I think, especially if some of these guys can't get their feet going.
And
Uh,
oh no,
sorry,
what
go ahead.
about Finland? I was going to ask you about Finland.
Yeah, so as far as Finland goes, as far as the forwards go, uh, they're going to have to play a gritty style of game, I believe, in order to be competitive, because the other teams are very high scoring. So they're going to have to play a gritty defensive minded game to keep up. And I mean, they've got some defensive players on their team as well. So I mean, they maybe have picked some of these guys specifically for those roles. They've got Armia from Montreal, Lehkonen, who's a decent defensive player. He used to play, the third line role when he was with the Canadiens, and now he's a little bit second line with Colorado. Luosterainen, Lundell, so Eric Halla. So they've got some guys that know the defensive side of the game. So you're probably going to see some line matching with those guys when they're playing against some of the top lines of Canada and the States. And the defense, there's some big hitters on that Finland defense. Hakanpää, Lindell, Mikkola, Ristolainen. So they've got some physical defensemen, a little bit more. They're probably going to be the most physical team when it comes to defense, more so than Canada and the States and Sweden. And they're gonna need to be, because I think they're probably the underdog going into this tournament.
Right. So you would say that Sweden is a stronger team than Finland here.
Yeah, I believe Sweden's stronger, and that's based on the fact that I think Sweden has a better offensive team, and you know, as far as defense goes, they've got a little bit more offense on the defensive side. The goaltending, I don't think there's going to be a huge gap in the goaltending for between the two teams. I think Sweden might have a little bit of an edge, but you know, I think Saros, if he can play like he's played every other year other than this year, I think that Finland should be okay in the net. So I think they're pretty comparable when it comes to goaltending. Um, the only team, like I said previously, that stands out as far as having really strong goaltending is the States. I think that between Canada, Finland, and Sweden, I think the goaltending there are pretty even.
Right, right. Okay. Well, is there anything else you wanted to say about this tournament that we haven't already talked about? I mean, it's going to be interesting. I can't wait to see it. I'm hoping that next week you and I and some other friends can get together, go somewheres and watch a game, is what I'm
Yeah.
hoping.
Oh, for sure. The only other thing I'd say about this is, during the last week here, there's been a little bit of injuries. I mean, they said today that Crosby is a little banged up, so I'm
Yeah,
still
yes.
thinking he's going to play. Um, but for Finland, though, they've lost Heiskanen. He's gone, so um, he's out for a couple months. He had knee surgery. Ristolainen, he got hurt 2 games ago. He's day to day, so I assume he's going to be back and ready to go for this, because it didn't sound like it was anything major. So, however, other than that, I think all the teams have been fairly healthy for the most part. Although Canada with Mitch Marner, he missed the last game for Toronto. So, but I still expect him to be playing. So,
I bet those GMs, Mike, have got their fingers crossed that nobody gets injured in this tournament.
yeah, I'm sure they've all got their fingers crossed on that. Nobody that has anybody in playoff contention wants to lose anybody at
No.
this thing here. So,
Do you think if there were a number of injuries that they may never do this tournament again? Do you think that's a possibility?
uh, I think that if there were a lot of injuries, the GMs might try to push for it to be done, either, probably in the summertime, like they did with the World Cup of hockey. That was done.
Right.
It was done in September. I mean, of 2016. So I mean, I think that's probably what they would push for, as opposed to having it in the middle of the season.
Right, right. Well, before we go, I know that that's everything that I had mentioned originally, but I wanted to know, Mike, because I saw this story the other night. Ryan Hartman's 10-game suspension, Mike. What did you think of that?
Well, I'm surprised he got that many games, because normally, they generally don't come down too hard on guys lately. However, he has been a multiple time repeat offender, so I don't know what he said in his defense of himself when it came to the hearing, but
It must not have been good.
I assume not. So, I mean, I'm a little surprised he got 10 games, but on the other hand, I'm not overly surprised either, I guess, just because he's been a repeat offender, and I know that they've been cracking down on guys that have had multiple suspensions. So, um,
I believe I had read that this is the fifth time he's been suspended. Is that
I
right?
think so, yeah. Fourth or fifth time he's been suspended.
I'm
And I
like,
mean,
my goodness.
most of his other suspensions, I think the most was like 5 games. So he's never been suspended long term, but he definitely got hit by it this time.
Yeah, well, man, I thought the move was pretty dirty personally, but I mean,
Yeah.
whatever. Okay, Mike. So I would like to go on to the Hockey Prophet segment where you are the Hockey Prophet. And yes, I have my timer all ready for you. So, Mike, I have a series of rapid fire questions here we're going to ask you because you are indeed the Hockey Prophet. Mike, are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, number one. Which player will have the most points at the end of this tournament?
Oh, boys. It's a tough one. I got to go with Connor McDavid.
Okay, number two. Will there be a fight in any of these tournament games?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Okay, number three. I had to ask that one.
I'd like to be proven wrong, though. I'd like to see one, but
Number three. Do you still think there's any way that Drew Doughty could get in this tournament?
possibly. I still don't think they've announced Peter Angelo's replacement. I know when I was talking about the lineups, I'd left Peter Angelo in there. So I mean, I just think that Doughty would sub in into his spot, and like for what we had discussed, I slipped my mind totally that he wasn't going to be in. But I think Doughty fills the same role and responsibility.
Okay, number four. Are you looking forward to watching your Flyers play on Team Canada?
Yes, I am. More so Konechny, because I really like Konechny. I like his play style. So definitely looking forward to. I'm curious to see who they're going to pair him with.
Right. I like Konechny as well. I think he's a pretty good player.
Yeah,
All right, Mike. And finally, number five, the most important question. Who is going to win this tournament? I mean, I'm going to put you on the spot here.
the United States is going to win this tournament.
Well, Mike, that was a whopping 1 minute and 38 seconds. So that's pretty good. And you say the United States. Well, Mike, I'm sorry. We have something for you here on Hockey Talk, and that's boo, boo.
Well, trust me, I'm cheering for Canada. I hope they can win. I at the end of the day, I think it's going to come down to the goaltending, and I think that the states are far superior in nets compared to Canada. I mean, if some of these Canadian goalies can really step up and have some great games, then you know what, it could be totally different. But
Well,
I foresee a Canada U.S. final with the states winning, unfortunately.
well, I'm glad that you're picking with your head and not with your heart because that doesn't get anybody anywhere. So you just think it's the U.S. and it makes sense. They do have better goaltending, or it sure seems like they do. They have the best goaltending in the tournament for sure. I would
Yeah.
say. Okay, Mike. Well, now I think we're going to leave it there for this evening. Was there anything else that you wanted to go over at all, though?
Just just to not to get off topic of the tournament, but for some NHL news, there was some trades there since our last podcast.
Right.
The Rangers picked up JT Miller from the Canucks, which is a great move for them.
Yes.
They didn't give up a ton to get him, in my opinion. Philip Hedl was the best player going the other way, and he's a middle six forward, so second line or third line, whereas JT Miller is a top line guy, and I think that's really going to jumpstart the Rangers, and they've played better since they've made the trade. So the Rangers could sneak back up there and take one of those spots away. So and then on the other side of the coin, the Canucks gave up a really good player. So to make up for it, they got a guy that can play the middle part of the lineup, like I said, with Philip Cheadle. And then they made a trade with Pittsburgh to toughen up the defense. They got Marcus Pettersson from Pittsburgh. More or less, the trade was for pretty much a first round pick, which it's a great move for Pittsburgh to get a first round
Right.
pick.
Well, they
Uh,
need it.
yeah, for sure. I mean, they've got to really build the cover there because Malkin and Crosby aren't getting any younger. Same as
No.
Letang and Carlson. So, but those are the key guys in that trade. Was more so Pedersen for a first, and then you got Dallas picked up Michael Granlund and Cody Ceci from the Sharks for a couple draft picks. So the Sharks got another first round pick, which is great for them. And Dallas gets a good player with tools in Michael Granlund because he can pretty much play anywhere through the lineup. He can play every position. They got Cody Ceci in the trade as well, who's a good depth defenseman.
Yeah, not a bad defenseman.
So good trade for Dallas. This way here, it gives them that bottom pairing guy that they can count on a little bit more because currently they had some younger guys in that spot that I think come playoff time, Cece's going to be a better fit for them. And Granlund, like I said, you could put him pretty much anywhere in the lineup, um, and he'll be fine. So just want to talk a little bit about those trades. I'm sure there's going to be more to come. I know that they've got a roster freeze coming up here for this tournament, so there won't be any NHL transactions while this is going on. So
Right. And then as soon as
curious
the
to see if
tournament's
anything.
over, there'll probably be a big swath of players being moved.
Well, we are getting close to the deadline. It's like a month away now, pretty much. So um, we shall see what happens. But it's funny. I was telling some of the other guys that I had spoken with, and like, geez, it might be a pretty boring trade deadline considering a lot of the bigger names are being moved already.
Well, that's what
So
happened last year too, right?
yeah, for the most part, yeah, the teams wanted to get a jump and get these guys integrated into their lineups more so than like with 10 or 15 games left. So now they've got, roughly 30 games right now left in the season. So to get these guys in and get things going, it's more beneficial. And I mean, I know it all comes down to cap space and that sort of thing. So, but yeah, and I really like the move by the Rangers. I think this is going to maybe get them back up and grab one of those last playoff spots because I mean they've got the team that can do it. They've got the goaltending, they've got the defense, they've got the forwards. It's just a matter of getting it all on the go here now.
Well, I'm hoping that they stumble and do not make it. I'd like to see one of these other teams make it, but I fear that the Rangers are going to get themselves in the playoffs. And then I probably wouldn't want to be the one to play them if they do. So,
I
depending on who the
agree
matchup
because
is.
if Shesterkin is on his game, and for the last few weeks he has been. So
Yes,
if he's on his game, then they're going to be a tough team to put out. So
definitely. All right. Well, I think we'll leave it there for tonight, Mike. So don't forget, folks, to like, share, and subscribe, and let us know in the comments section where we went wrong, because I'm sure we said something wrong. And we will see you next week. Later.
later.